So moved, Brian.
Moved by Dave, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lester. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're gonna get right into the meat of the parks here because I think we have people in all facets here. We have 17 supervisors, and I think we're from full-blown open to full-blown closed and everybody in between. And we're gonna go first to Matt Jones because he has new guidance from the state and information that we need to hear. And so he's gonna kind of frame it up for us where we're at, where we're trying to get, or where everyone's trying to get. And hopefully we're gonna come to a compromise and make something happen, and we'll go from there. So Matt, go ahead.
All right, I think what I'm gonna do is just start with, in a normal year, we would be open starting next weekend for the weekends until school was out. So we'd be open, Saturday, Sunday, and until I think it was like the end of June where we end up going full time. As of right now, we are still going ahead like we're gonna open under all the regulations. We have no guidance not to. So, but that being said, we won't be ready until the weekend of June 13th they open up, due to everything that's gone on, obviously in the last few months, and getting new guidance from the Department of Health and from the governor and from the state. So right now I'm proposing that we go ahead with June 13th for the weekends until the end of June where we would go full time. I've been in touch with the Department of Health, and what I'm having a hard time coming up with is an in-between point of open and closed. I'm the, operator of the park. I signed that I am going to follow these regulations set forward by the Department of Health every year. It's, guidelines that have been made long before me that the county's been able to follow, and we've operated our parks around these guidelines. There's a, authority when it comes to it. So I'm going to leave it out there as my recommendation that we keep going forward. And then we can take questions and discussions from there.
So in a nutshell, Matt, they give you guys sign an agreement. This is how you're gonna do things.
That's right.
And you're saying you still have to abide by that agreement.
That's right.
If you're open.
Everything from staffing to safety to water testing to, public safety, right from, it's a book. It's like 50 pages long. It's developed with the Department of Health on how we operate. So there's not really a middle ground without reapplying for the permit process. One thing that we do have the ability to do is we can change times, hours, and stuff like that. But if we're open, I still have to staff a certain way, and I still have to have certain public amenities like the bathrooms and this and that. So, we didn't really come to any agreement before, but some of the discussion before was based on, fencing off the beach and fencing off this and that. That wasn't really sitting well. It didn't have a no, it didn't have a yes from the state, but in my mind, it's not going to be a viable solution to our problem. I really think that the parks are going to be busy. I mean, people want to do stuff. They want to get out right now, and I feel like we're going to have it staffed as a safety issue. I don't think we can just open gates and kind of go at it your own risk type of deal.
Well, and in our earlier discussion, I think, and I don't know if everyone agrees, you believe they're going to be packed, the gates closed even.
Yes.
And so,
I do.
And so our liability almost doesn't change whether it's open or closed because it's going to be full.
People are using it at a record pace right now.
With it closed?
With it closed. I mean, if you go by, there's people there. Somehow I was mentioning earlier, after our decision in committee last time to close it, somehow, my being the operator of the park and this and that, my phone went crazy for 2 or 3 days, and I'm trying to steer people to you, they're your constituents. I'm just trying to provide you with the facts of the park. Whether they called you or not, but that I don't know, but I can just send them your way.
Okay. So let's go right to comments with the supervisors and let's see where we go from here. Let's start with Dave O'Brien.
So a question that should be paramount in our mind is that if we open or don't open, we still have a legal liability up there, correct? And I don't see Roger, but what's the liability going to be? Is it going to be better to have people supervising up there or no one supervising up there and potentially have more potential liability claims come in against us? And even though we're covered to a certain point, that amount we're responsible for keeps on adding up for each claim.
Okay.
So do we have any read on that?
Matt Hicks, not at this point, but I'm in agreement with you, but that's, Roger's not here at the moment. Go ahead, Matt.
So, Matt, what you're saying is this is a very black and white issue. We either open the parks exactly by that 50-page agreement you signed, or we don't open them at all, and there's no middle ground. Is that what you're saying?
There's not much room for middle ground, Matt. It's,
Okay,
you
so
operate according to the, yeah.
Okay, if that's the case, you're saying we would not be able to open and operate by the book until at least June 13th, correct?
yes,
So that means between now and June 13th, the parks would have to be closed.
yes,
So they would not be open this weekend. You'd have to lock the gates for this weekend, right?
yes.
They're locked now though and they're full. That's the other issue.
Our issue is we've opened the gates to Hewlett. That's been something that we've done, but we've opened them when we're, Roger can speak to it. We're open when we're closed and closed when we're open. There you go. So people would still have access to it. So right now they still have access to it. So I would probably, unless you guys wanted to change that, the Hewlett's gate would remain open until we open as a park, until we open, and then they would close.
Well, so now I'm having a little discussion here. You're saying we can't do it by the book until the 13th, and then we can do it by the book. But between now and the 13th, we're not going to do it by the book because it's not practical. So if we're not going to do it by the book between now and the 13th, why is the book important? You know what I mean? Why don't we just continue on?
He doesn't know what you mean.
It makes no sense.
I exactly know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. This is something that was before me. This was decided on by the supervisors on how they operate the park in Hewlett with the gates. And it was what it was access for fishermen and everything else. And normally we'd be open before people started wanting to use the beach. So that is an issue, Matt. I don't have the answer to it, but as far as operating the park, and having people swimming, my recommendation right now, I don't like it, but would be to shut the gates because of the nice weather in the weekend until we did open. That would be my recommendation. You would have to undo something that you guys did, maybe not particularly you, but the board had done before.
But you won't still keep people out is what you're.
We're still not gonna keep people out, but I think.
Still gonna be full.
But we're closed. We're technically closed when the gates close. And Roger could speak to that if he was here. I mean, the Department of Health would speak to that too, We're not opening.
I can offer a little bit on that. This is not legal advice. I'm not Roger. I'm not a lawyer. In my conversations with Roger, the way he's portrayed it to me is that there is a different responsibility and a different liability exposure as to whether somebody is what they refer to as an invitee or a trespasser. So if the parks are officially closed and the gates are closed, then somebody who's there is a trespasser. Now, we still have a liability obligation to them for open and notorious hazards, like the infamous tiger pit that I'm not allowed to put in. You can't have stuff like that. But our liability is much less when we're not open. So that's the best way I can try to summarize that without getting completely outside of it.
Okay. The day and a half.
Okay. I remember when it was decided that during the off season, when the park is closed, the gate is open. And during on season, when the park is open, the gates are closed at night. But during the wintertime, the gates are open. It's at your own risk. I don't understand why that could not be continued through the summertime. It's the same mechanism and the same liability. If you ask any attorney, they'll tell you don't do anything due to liability. So I don't think we really should look at the legal aspect too much because we would not be allowed to do anything. The original reason to keep the parks closed was financial. Chris, can you tell me, there's two lines. We have Lauderdale and Hewlett's revenue, Lauderdale and Hewlett's expense. Now, you had said we would save $90,000. In my memory, I don't have the budget in front of me, but I thought the revenue for both parks combined was around $24,000. I think Lauderdale is about 20,000. Hewlett's is a huge money loser. I think Hewlett's revenue is only 4,000. What is the expense in each park? That's what I don't remember. Is the total expense around $100,000 and then the revenue 24? So you come down to about $76,000, $78,000 total loss. I don't quite understand the $90,000. Another point is, if we're talking about going into an austerity budget, but yet we're going to have expense for recreation. I mean, that doesn't make sense, guys. You're thinking with two heads.
Yeah, no, I think, Dana, I think you're looking at the one aspect we all look at, but now we have to remember that things have changed, and we're going to have a certain larger a group than ever that can afford nothing, and if they have the ability to go to the park, they have the ability to get something for what they paid their taxes for. That's what I'm hearing as I have separate discussions with separate supervisors, that these people are going to need an outlet. They've been cooped up. Some of them won't even have jobs to return to. So I think they're looking at the issue a little bit different than normal.
Greenwich has a town beach on the Battenkill, and Putnam has a town beach on the lake. They're not that far away.
Do you think they could handle all the people that come from Lauderdale and Hewlett? I think that would be a problem.
That's their problem, not ours.
Those are our taxpayers. We're not
We're-
going to take
we're
away
here
their
for
access to Lake
We're here for
George.
county business. We really should not worry about whether Greenwich can handle them all. If they have a lot of business, going to make revenue, put on more people. It's all revenue driven.
Chris, you wanted to interject something?
I can respond to Mr. Haff's question. So the revenue side for Hewlett Park is budgeted at $2,000. For Lauderdale, it's budgeted at $18,000. Revenue of $20,000 for Park. The expense for Hewlett's total expense is $47,772. Total expense for Lauderdale is $62,600. So that gives you a combined revenue of $20,000 and a combined expense of $110,372. When you remove the $20,000 in revenue, if you were to eliminate all the expense, that would be a net savings of $90,372. That's how I came up with that rough number of $90,000, Mr. Haff.
Do you have the actual, or is that just like?
That's budget.
I would like to see the
I
actual.
see it, James, but I got Sue first. Go ahead, Sue.
First of all, I think the parks are going to be busier than ever because people don't have lunch, learn, and play. They don't have their swim camps. They don't have places to go and congregate like they did before. So whether they're open or closed, they're at Lake Lauderdale, they will probably come around the back trail and they're probably already using it. Matt, a question for you regarding Lake Lauderdale. Did you get storm damage? Because I know the backside.
Oh, yeah, we got a lot of storm damage down there. And in fact, I think a tree fell through part of the pavilion.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. did.
Is that a safety hazard? Could you use that as a way to keep it closed to say June 13th when you could reopen as a
The
reasoning?
plan for reopening, Sue, we wouldn't be able to open the pavilion.
Yeah.
Or the playground equipment, and that's the state regulations coming from the governor on
Right.
his procedures to start opening the beaches. So it would be closed off. And my recommendation would be that we cancel the reservations for the month of June.
Yeah.
And then we play it by ear, and then with the July ones, if we need to cancel July's because we're still under the same regulations, from the state, but we have a list from the governor's thing on how to open these beaches, and we would follow them.
Okay, I think the treasurer wanted to interject. Oh, go ahead, Sue.
So Matt, how much damage was done at Lake Lauderdale regarding all those pine trees? Is there a lot of trees down?
Yeah, I haven't laid my eyes on them personally. My guys have been down there. DPW's been down there to clear the roads. They couldn't even get into the park. I do know that, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Treasurer,
Thanks for all you're
did you want
doing.
to interject? Did you want to interject something on the money aspect maybe?
Well, I thought I heard somebody ask about what the actual was compared to budget.
Okay,
The 2019 actual by park, Hewlett's was 39,193. Lauderdale was 36,410 for a total net cost of 75,513. That's 2019 actual.
okay. Now, James Griffith.
Thanks, Brian. So just in clarification, based on our adopted budget, that's 0.1% of our total expense budget. When I budget things, especially in a crisis, I'm looking at the larger piece of the pie to take chunks out of. So for one thing, we're looking at a very small piece of our budget to take away something that the lower portion of our income families are not going to have in the summer. I agree. The beaches will be, I think, full, but that's a responsibility for us to be able to have some requirements and guidelines. Less than 10 people per group. Matt, I believe you're also going to have some expenses in regards to having training for somebody. You're going to have additional cleaning expenses, possibly Perel or something like that, hand sanitizer available in the bathrooms. I think you have to have a focus with somebody more in the bathroom. There is going to be an additional expense. It's great to hear that we don't eliminate all the revenue that we could get from the pavilion. But I think when we look at it from a financial perspective, it's such a small piece of the pie. If we're gonna put a dent on our budget, 0.1% of our expense doesn't make sense to me to take away a benefit from the constituents so they have something in the summertime.
Okay, I got Bob Henke next.
Yeah, I have to reiterate what Jim said. I think that the benefit far outweighs the expense here. But in terms of the Hewlett's Gate, way back, there was some agreement with the Sportsman's Federation and perhaps with the Owners Association up there to leave the gates open during the off season for fishing access. I believe that's what the agreement was. That was back when I was first coming on the board, but we did agree to do that. That's why they're open when we're closed.
Okay. Hey, thanks for clarifying that. Mr. Rozell, I see you've joined us. Good morning.
Morning. I think James has explained it perfect. The people around here, I even had a church group from Granville get in touch with me about it. And for that, yes, it's an expense, but for what the county's gonna gain, maybe more than well worth it.
Okay. Mr. Ferguson.
Yes, I also agree with James. The money we're spending or gonna save doesn't touch the budget at all. It's a 0.1%. But also, as far as keeping the gate closed, our townspeople, it's their only access to Lake George with their kayaks, and they kayak, especially now, during the week and on weekends. So it's really important to kind of leave the gate open for these people that have nothing else to do and don't have the money to do anything else.
And back to James.
Brian, we have a reopening committee, an ad hoc committee, correct?
What's that?
We have an ad hoc committee for reopening, correct? Washington County Reopening Committee?
For the county as a whole, but not as county government, yes.
Well, can they address this issue in regards to safety concerns, upon reopening the park? Guidelines on face masks, guidelines on how many, what size group? It should be less than 10 based on what New York State guidelines are. But can we make sure that the reopening committee has this on their agenda as a topic?
I guess we could. Sam says yes. Matt?
I would just add to that, I don't have a problem with, that. We do have, guidelines already from the governor and the state on how to operate a park through the state departments. We have all the information you're asking for. We've been securing the supplies to hand sanitizers. We've been getting the free hand sanitizer. I just requested some for Tim. I think by June 13th, we could really have that plan in place. And while I'm talking, not to beat a dead horse, but the gate issue in Hewlett, the only issue that I do see is we are going a little later into the season, to open. Normally, we'd be opening this weekend. We don't have a problem normally with people swimming and doing that sort of stuff before now because the weather just doesn't, the lake is cold. By going to a June 13th opening, that does open us up a little bit different than every year to warmer weather and a holiday weekend. So that is the difference. I don't have an answer. And I guess I'm gonna leave it at this. My suggestion to the committee, what I'm asking for, is we don't act. I mean, as of right now, we're still operating under normal circumstances with the exception of the governor, the state guidelines are changed this year, which I would have to follow. I mean, I sign on the dotted line every year that I'm operator of the park, and if I don't do that,
So
I don't know what-
you're saying to not act, but we still have to change the opening date, or is that come under a different guidance?
Well, in the past, I guess I've brought to committee, like if we had to shorten the hours or anything like that, I have brought that to the committee, but if I can't staff it correctly, if I can't operate under those guidelines, I have to make that decision myself to not open it. And you can be mad at me for not doing my job, but I still I can't open it, Like I'm signing that I'm gonna staff it this way and I'm gonna have the water test done, that I'm the operator of the park. And if I don't do that correctly, I can't open it. I can open it, make you happy and not the state or, vice versa. So I guess that's where I'm gonna leave it. I mean, I can continue on the same path and make sure that we are operating according to all the regulations set forth, just the same as I do every year. This isn't,
Well, if we go that path, I think we have to issue a statement that they will not be open till June 13th.
I would be good with that.
Go ahead.
I agree, and I completely understand where Matt's coming from, and unfortunately, I think Matt's in a bit of a hard spot here in that he's indicating to the committee that, due to the upheaval and the uncertainty, we can't open on the normal schedule. So the earliest he can do it and comply with all the regulations that have to be complied with is June 13th. And I think Matt's point is kind of, it's a little moot because that's the best he can do. My recommendation or my suggestion might be that if the committee were willing to, a motion by the committee to that effect, officially changing the open date of the parks to June 13th, would just codify, solidify, and back Matt up in that decision. So if the committee were willing to do that, I think that would be helpful.
In the meantime, as you can see, our Honorable Esquire has joined us, so if there's any questions for him, we'll take any of those. Mr. Rozelle.
I don't think we should put Matt on the spot, and I would agree. I would make the motion to open the beach, for 13th under state regulations.
Okay, do I have a second on that motion?
I second it.
Second by Mr. Ferguson. Okay, discussion. Dave O'Brien.
Well, one of the things that you look at is that the beaches are already crowded. We expect it to be even more crowded when the weather gets better. If we have no one there watching what's going on, we run the risk of safety issues and different things coming up out of there from whatever can happen there. Even if we don't open, we should have some sort of supervision up there. So if there's issues, we can get a hold of the police and bring the police in or whoever we have to. But I'm uncomfortable if we decide to close the beaches, simply leaving them unattended for that reason. That could bring a lot more legal liability and a lot more issues on us. So I'd still like to ask Roger, if we were closed, don't we have the same liability if something happens up there? If we're open or not open?
You got the spotlight.
Well, Yeah, I'm ready for the parks. I got my sunglasses. Actually, I went to the eye doctor today and I can't see a thing. So, are we gonna be closed with the gates closed and everything else? Or are we gonna let folks use the rest of the park? And I missed the initial discussion. Just close the beach part of it.
No, we're back now to, we are under guidelines that we agreed to, that Matt signed with the state to run the park. So we're back to the point that we can't even meet those guidelines till June 13th. So we need to at least be closed till June 13th. We'll know good weather's coming, and people are gonna be there anyway. I think that's where Dave wants to know, what's our liability when people are gonna be there anyway? And he wants to know, do we parade, the police force sit there and keep them all out, or do we monitor it, or do we just, status quo, where do we go from here?
If the gates are gonna be closed, then people going over the gates or past the gates are trespassers, which are treated differently than folks when the gates are open, okay?
Okay.
But in any event, it's property that you own and are responsible for, and so it should be monitored in some respect. And you know that, the likelihood of people wanting to get in or going over the gate or through the gate or around the gate or whatever, whether it's open or closed, is gonna be higher when the weather's warmer than it would be, say, in the middle of February. So your obligation to monitor it would increase accordingly.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Dave?
I mean, it's the definition
Yeah, it
of
does.
a traffic.
I mean, even if the gates are closed and we say keep out, people go in there, even if there's a nuisance lawsuit, we're gonna incur costs to defend ourselves.
You're gonna need to monitor it regardless, because you know people are there. You have that knowledge already. So there's gonna have to be some kind of monitoring.
Thank you.
There should be somebody on the premises, or not maybe stationed there 8 or 10 hours a day, but frequently enough that you can keep track of what's going on.
Okay, I think I had Dana Half next. Is that right, Dana?
Yes, thank you. Going back to the finances, Chris, I think the loss is 110,000 because there would be no revenue. You're offsetting the expense by the revenue. But if the pavilions are closed and everything else, and there's no charge to enter the park, it's $110,000 budgeted loss, correct?
So there's the number that I gave you was no revenue, no expense.
With budget numbers.
Well, it was budget numbers, but it was no revenue, no expense would be net 90. Under the current guidelines, and I always put the asterisk subject to change any minute based on the governor, is that we cannot operate the pavilion. So that would be the entire $2,000 of revenue in Hewlett's is from pavilion rent. In Lauderdale, it's from parking revenue more than it is from pavilion rentals. So there would, if we continue to move forward the way it looks as though we're going, then there would be some revenue in Lauderdale. Now, under the current guidelines from the governor, again, asterisk, we're supposed to limit parking. So I don't know what that would do to our revenue because I don't know what our normal capacity and what our normal occupancy of the parking lot of Lauderdale is. But there would still be parking revenue at Lauderdale unless an action were taken by the board to remove that.
Why is there not parking revenue at Hewlett's?
That's my understanding is that's the way it's always been structured.
Well, it was gonna cost more to collect the parking than it was what we could get for the parking.
Yeah.
That was the understanding back when that was put in place.
But, so suddenly you're
Oh, go
concerned,
ahead.
suddenly you're concerned with cost of operating a park? That's kind of ironic. Thank you.
Well, they've been concerned right along. That's been in place because of that. Max?
Okay, so now I'm confused. So we have to live in a black and white world. We follow the rules or don't follow the rules, but now we understand that people will be coming in there anyway, even though it's locked. So we better monitor it and have somebody there, but that's not following the rules. So it's sort of where they're open, we're closed, but we've realized now we're going to have to be semi-open because people are going to come anyway. What the hell are we talking about here? This doesn't make any sense to me. We're trying to follow a set of rules where the goalposts keep moving on us. That's what I can't quite fathom.
What I was saying to you, Matt, is that you know that beach is there, and you know that people are going to attempt to get to it. especially when the weather's warmer. So armed with that and our past history, armed with that knowledge and our past history, I think you have some obligation to monitor it. I don't think whether the gate's open or closed, you can't just turn your back on the fact knowing that that's going to happen. We've just had that discussion and stated we know that's going to happen. So there should be some monitoring. There should always be some monitoring there, but there should definitely be some monitoring when you know you might have a problem.
But then they're not following the
So-
rules that Matt signed to. So if we're not going to follow those rules that Matt signed to now, what good are those rules for the whole thing for the whole summer?
I'm not saying we're not going to follow the rules. I'm saying that you can probably bet that other people aren't going to follow those rules, and therefore you should be paying attention to that fact.
We're not following the rules if we're monitoring it, because Matt says we really can't do anything until June 13th, so we shouldn't have anybody there.
I can't operate a beach until June 13th.
Well, you shouldn't have anybody there, but I've just heard discussion amongst supervisors and others saying, but we know people will.
They're there now. We know they're there now.
Correct. Therefore, you should try to do something about that so that we are following the rules.
Well, the rules keep changing. My thought is open the gates, tell everybody they're going at their own risk, put a couple of porta potties in there, and let people just recreate starting this weekend. But that doesn't follow anybody's rules in any regard. That's just my thoughts, so I'm sure it won't fly. But all right, keep going, Brian.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yeah, I actually agree with Matt on the porta potties and open them up the way they are and let the people regulate themselves. But also is to bring up why we can't pay charge for parking and other things. I believe that the families that donated the Hewlett's Park back when, and Roger should know this, is you can't ever charge for the beach access.
I've heard that, but I've never actually seen it written down. But then again, I've not gone through that Hewlett's file in quite some time, so.
Right, I believe, I'm thinking, I don't think you can close it either without it going back to the people who donated.
I do believe Mr. Ferguson is correct. Again,
He's online. I don't know the exact part, but
I've not laid my eyes on it.
Yeah.
My understanding is that there's a reverter clause that we have to operate it as a park or else it goes back. But again, that's more hearsay than fact.
Right, even if there was a reverter clause, there's a difference between the situation we're in now and saying we're done.
Oh, yeah.
We could never sell it because it's dedicated parkland anyway, so.
Parkland alienation is a mess we
Right.
don't want to get into.
Well, we did good the first time, so let's see if James Griffith can bring us back to earth again.
Well, thanks, Brian. I don't disagree with Matt either. I think we should open them. I think we should put a sign on the beach that says, swim at your own risk. And on June 13th, when Matt can open the parks, to the way in which we can operate them, I think we get rid of the porta potties then, and then we reopen the parks the right way June 13th. But I already know, and I'm over there myself. We're walking the trails. There's people in there already walking trails, already utilizing Lake Lauderdale at recreationally, and they do it all year long, regardless of whether the gates are closed or not. So I agree with Matt that we should look at this weekend. They can come in at their own risk. I really think that up here, we're doing a good job. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think people that are going to Lake Lauderdale that I see are younger people with younger children. It's not partiers that are going to Lake Lauderdale. I don't see that when I'm up there. I see families having birthday parties and things like that. It's not like going up to a beach and having a rage. That's not what I see there. So I'd like to see them open, and then June 13th we open them officially according to what Matt can do.
Okay. Yeah, so the governor has minimum rules at beaches that have to be enforced, and we may, I lost everybody. What are you doing? Oh, you're sharing. Okay. So we have to abide by them. We can be more stringent, but are you suggesting, Chris, that we couldn't do it the way that's being suggested because that would be less stringent?
No, I don't know. I'm sharing information. I don't have a good answer. This whole thing is clear as mud. I think, Matt Jones's concern, when he said it earlier, is that if we open the gates, and this goes to Mr. Haff's, question earlier on, the difference between having the gate in Hewlett's open in February and the gate in Hewlett's open in May is the beach. And once the beach is quote unquote open for swimming, we fall under Department of Health regulations. In the wintertime, when it's frozen, we do not. Once the Department of Health regulations for swimming beaches kick in, that's the whole park plan that Matt's referring to. And so I think there's a concern that if we open the gates and try to allow people access to the park, knowing that some people are already doing it anyway, we then have to follow all of the other regulations that come therein. And so just putting the porta potties and a swim at your own risk sign, well, that seems very logical, and that was certainly what I was advocating for at the beginning of all this. What we're getting from the state and the interpretation of those governor's regulations that Tim has just put on the screen is that we're not allowed to do that. Now, somebody will invariably ask the question, what the ramifications of that are. There's a bullet on the governor's guidelines that say any beach that doesn't comply with these, or any park or amenity or beach that doesn't comply with these things will be shut down. Shut down by whom and in what form, I have no idea. So, I don't have a good answer to this.
But if we're unofficially, we're not open anyway. If we're officially closed and you just did that and the gate's open, how do you shut down what isn't open? I mean, I don't know.
Well, so I think the issue here is that if we open the gate, and I'm looking to Roger because I don't know if this is an accurate statement, it's my interpretation. If we open the gate, as soon as we do that, all the other rules, regulations, and procedures follow. If we close the gate, then the people who are there are trespassers, not invitees. Our obligation to them is different. But to Roger's previous point, because we have a reasonable expectation that there are going to be people in there as trespassers, we have some obligation to monitor it. But if we're closed, we can monitor it without triggering all those other Department of Health regulations, rules, and procedures. Because we're just monitoring for trespassers, we're not operating the beach.
Right.
I think.
The DOH regulations apply to the beach. You can have a park with no beach. You can't have a beach with no park. But you can have a park with no beach. So opening the beach triggers those obligations. Opening the park doesn't necessarily trigger opening the beach. But in either event, you're going to want to know what's going on there, because if the beach is closed, you're going to want to make sure that that is enforced or at least monitored in some respect.
So with swimming your own risk, you didn't open the beach.
So,
But you have a stretch of sand, and the governor has said this is how that stretch of sand can work, and it is registered with the state as a bathing beach, which comes with all.
But that stretch of sand is the same stretch of sand whether the gate is open or closed.
We can play word games all day long, but I'm telling you that that's a beach. It's been recognized as a beach. It's a thin beach. It's going to be.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a beach whether it's open or
So,
closed.
Mr. Campbell, I think what it comes down to is if it's a beach, it's a beach, it's a beach, no matter what. Our obligation as the owner of that beach changes based on whether that gate is open or closed.
Okay.
I think that's what it boils down to.
Well, whether the beach is open or closed.
But to your earlier point, in order to close the beach, we still have to monitor in some way, shape, or
You have to monitor it either way. Okay? You have to monitor it differently depending on whether you're declaring it open or closed.
Yep.
Open has certain obligations. Closed would have certain obligations. Let's say we never wanted to run a beach again. We still want somebody paying attention to what was going on in that park.
Yeah, I just meant you couldn't close the beach and turn your back, was all I was trying to say.
Okay, Mr. Hogan.
Hey, Roger, would a sheriff's or state trooper patrol satisfy the requirements of a monitor?
Sure.
Okay, then
You
why
just can't
don't,
turn your back and not look. Turn a blind eye, a willful blind eye.
okay, then why don't we just ask them to increase the patrols, monitor the area, until June 13th and move on, please.
So, Dana, can you clarify, are you saying with the gate closed or with the gate open, or is either one that you're concerned?
Matt Jones has told us that his recommendation is close the gate until June 13th, ask the sheriffs or state troopers to monitor it until June 13th, and then move on after that.
Okay, got it. James, did you have something you want to comment on that, or?
I'm good. I'm good, Brian. Thank you.
Okay. LOS.
Just wanted to speak real quick to the revenue question a few minutes ago. Out of the $19,516 brought in at Lauderdale, 2,500 of that was from a contract with Cambridge for their summer swim program. And 8,164 was from Pavilion Rentals, and 8,852 was the $2 entrance parking fee. So that's how that revenue breaks down in Lauderdale.
Very good. Appreciate that. Matt Hicks.
So the suggestion is that the sheriff swings by each park a couple times a day, and we're going to say that's good enough for monitoring. They're just going to peek in on the other side of the gate, and then that covers our ass. We're good to go.
Roger?
Matt, you're going to have somebody there?
That has to be a question for you, not me.
That would have to be a question for the sheriff. I mean, they have to be there enough to know what's going on.
Well, so we're going to have, are we going to station a sheriff there? Are we going to, Matt, you're going to have somebody there as far as your staff all day Saturday and all day Sunday? Are we going to have the sheriff to have somebody there all day Saturday and all day Sunday? Let's define all this crap before we move on.
Sue Clary.
Jay Scally's not here, but Jay and I and the DEC and state police and Washington County Sheriff have met multiple times because of overseeing the Banco River and the amount of people that go there, trespassing and doing all the things that they do on the Banco River. I think that we need to give guidelines to the sheriff, because I think we're opening up Pandora's box to say, you know, what is it they're responsible for? And, but that being said, it's a new ball game. So I would definitely talk with the sheriffs about how they go forward on this. Also, is some of that expenditure, is that personnel cost, and would we be paying it anyways?
Personnel costs, well, the hourly rates when you're closed to lifeguards and park managers would not be paid anyway. That would only be when they're open. Buildings and grounds going there, the sheriff going there, they're all on their typical routine, so that would be the same money. So I guess I needed clarity if there's something different than you wanted than that.
For me, as far as the expenditures go, I was curious as to seeing if that was part of that total amount. Was that labor cost that we would be spending anyways? So that kind of makes that expenditure cost look more inflated. And I just look at the parks as a real asset to our communities, and I'd like to figure out how to continue and go forward and, you know, reworking the plan however we need to do it. But that's what we're going to be doing in every department. So why not do this one too? You know?
Okay, very good.
So the expense in the parks for personnel is only when they work. So if they're not working, there's no expense.
Thank you.
Right. Our only expense would be the buildings and grounds and the sheriff and whoever just passes through, Chris.
That's not included in the $100,000.
Right, absolutely.
I think what Mr. Clary was trying to get at was, are those personnel costs going to exist whether the parks are open or closed? And no, because dedicated seasonal staff. So they're not employees that we have on the payroll anyway, and we only charge them to the parks when the parks are open. These are new hires that are seasonal, temporary for the parks. So if the parks don't open, those costs are not incurred.
Thank you, Chris.
A certain amount of cost will be shifted to buildings and grounds due to the fact that staff usually did the maintenance and did all the landscaping, you know, a lot of small stuff. That would be, if we weren't open, that'd be shifted to buildings and grounds budget, because we're still gonna have to take care of the park. We still maintain the buildings that are there and the grounds.
Well, you have to clean up the trees, you have
We still
to
got
clean up now, and you're gonna fix the roof.
We still own all the, or, you know,
Yeah,
the buildings
That's not,
there, so there will
that's
be.
not an additional cost.
Correct.
Yes. And I think it was James that mentioned earlier, there'll also be additional costs for sanitizing and all those things that, you know, originally going into, when we passed the budget, we didn't realize this pandemic was coming, and those things were all gonna be expenses too.
So you do know, we are on a pretty stringent at the beaches sanitizing schedule anyways with the bathrooms. We're under the Department of Health guidelines, which before always seemed kind of over the top. Well, now they're gonna fit the bill for the current situation we're in. And our lifeguards aren't only lifeguards at this park, they're also maintenance, they're also cleaners. You know, they do all that already. And, you know, we started securing the materials we were gonna need, like the sanitizers and such already. So I don't think that's gonna be a huge lift or cost to get that part of it done, because if we do open, it's gonna be on the staff that's there to do the cleaning. We're not gonna be hiring
Okay,
extra staff to do cleaning. I wouldn't, you know, suggest that at all. And I think as far as like the sanitizers, we'd be trying to, use the state provided stuff that, Tim has. You know, we're starting to secure some of that now and stash it. So I think some of that stuff isn't gonna be a huge cost. I don't foresee that being a big difference in the total.
okay. Mr. Noel.
And just extra little tidbit that you may or may not want to hear, but any additional cost that Matt has to be COVID compliant will be captured on our FEMA claim. So if that's going to be, those costs will definitely be eligible. I know we've had conversations about the time and a half and all that, but those additional COVID costs for Matt are absolutely claimable under the FEMA grant.
Okay,
Al.
Dana has,
Many years ago, I don't know if Gail Hall was the budget officer, if it was Brian, but we were talking about closing the parks. At that time, Bob Banks ponied up some money from his town to keep Hewlett's open. I'd like to see these towns that are so concerned that their citizens won't have a park, pony up something. Paul, are you ready to pony up so the county can get some revenue from the towns to do this? And Lauderdale, that's in the town of Jackson, right?
Yep.
Is Jackson gonna pony up some money? I hear we have to have this expense because the citizens need it. And the towns that these beaches are in are leading that charge. Pony up some money.
James Griffin.
Al, if there had to be an additional hourly for cleaning, is that a COVID expense? And an additional salary
So I can tell you that we would be able to make a really hard sell, and Chris could chime in if I go astray, but right now, under all of the guidance we've received, anything that you have to add to be COVID compliance, okay? The issue with the time and a half is they will not pay us for regular people doing their regular jobs on their regular hours. So if you do something above and beyond, so if we have to hire 3 new nurses for contact tracing, they're eligible. If you have to hire new staff just to be compliant with the sterilization and cleaning, that's COVID compliance.
Okay.
So I would make a definite hard sell for those items.
Thank you.
Is that appropriate,
Dave
Chris?
Trout.
Yeah, no, that's accurate, Al. Good job.
My question, I'm a little confused, so I've got to ask Matt. You know how you said that to be compliant with the governor's requirements, you really can't open till June what?
To be compliant with my Department of Health, to operate a beach. Back to where I just went, there's a beach and there's a park, and they are regulated separate. Our bathing beach is what's regulated by Department of Health. Due to everything that's going on this year, I don't feel comfortable saying I could open up the beach until June 13th. That gives me time to do the water testing, have the correct staff, have them trained, have everything that I need done. We're working on getting extensions because you got to remember there was no lifeguards getting certifications this last 3 months. There was nobody getting CPR classes this last few months. So those are the hurdles that I'm having a hard time being ready to operate a beach by this weekend. By June 13th, I feel pretty comfortable that I can have that correct. The park is a different story. You know, having trails and everything else is different than the beach.
So you're saying and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so tell me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. You could be compliant if you've got till June 13th to open the beaches.
Yes.
Between this weekend and June 13th, what can happen at those parks that you feel comfortable that you can be in compliance with? That's all I'm trying to understand.
And as much as I don't like it as a citizen, as, you know, the operator of the park and the beaches, my suggestion was to close the gate until the 13th until I can open it. If you guys decide to do something else, I'll be compliant with what you tell me, but
No.
that's my suggestion. It would be the easiest on my staff. It gives us more time to clean up from the storm in Lauderdale, you know, to get rid of the safety hazards to Rogers, you know, point, the stuff that we know is there, the trees are down or leaning and stuff like that, which is kind of, you know, this year's a little more because of the storm, but normally the stuff we have, and I haven't had my staff in being critical to do that between the time we shut down and now. So I didn't have my whole staff here down there cleaning up branches and getting the park ready because I didn't feel that was essential for time and a half, you know, work until we got farther guidance. Now we're down the road. Now I can.
It's clear now. Thank you. I understand. Now my question for Roger is the action that was taken Friday at the board meeting. If we don't do anything other than accept the action of the board meeting on Friday, what occurs? Does the beaches open up?
I'm trying to work back to what you decided to do there. I think you wanted to have your beaches open.
Well, there was no, I thought we voted down a resolution to close them, so does that leave it to where we're normal operation?
Yeah, and we have a motion on the floor now that was to open this weekend. If what was our motion on the floor? I can't remember it now.
To change the opening day of the parks to June 13th.
Okay.
Good.
So we're at least in the right place. I was afraid we'd gone the other route.
That's good. That's
we discussed them all.
That's what we can do, correct? That is something that's doable, is what you're saying. With the motion on the floor, after all this dialogue, that is doable, Matt? That we could postpone it or move the opening date back to June 13th?
That's what's on the floor. That's what's on the floor right now.
That's the motion that's on the floor.
So just to clarify, the gates will be closed at both parks.
That was my suggestion, whether that's part of the motion.
Is that where we are? The gates will be closed through to June 13th. And they will open when we actually can open the beach. That's where I think we're at, but I'll take information from anybody at this point.
That's John Mizell.
Parliamentary procedure question. The Board of Supervisors had a resolution, and I think I remember it said regular schedule. How can a subcommittee take a bite out of that apple that was already decided by the Board of Supervisors?
You can't.
So everything you're talking about here, June 13th,
The resolution was not adopted.
is moot.
The resolution was, that's right, the resolution was voted down. There is no resolution, there's no change to anything right now.
There is no resolution.
Other than
Tabled, not voted down.
It got tabled.
All right, thank you.
Matt, at both parks, do you have a fixed capacity number that you're aware of
500,
at each park?
yes.
And you'll have,
I'm positive I'm pretty sure it's 500 and it's close to that at the other one. So I don't have the exact number. I do know it's 500 at Lauderdale to be precise.
and you'll be able
And
to,
that's
with
for
your,
the beach, not the park.
That's for the beach.
That's for the beach, not the park. I don't have a park capacity number.
how would you now regulate the beach being open only at 50%? Would you have to count people? Would you have to have the staff there? Would you close the gate when there's 250 that come in? How would you take care of that compliance with what Tim put up on the screen a few minutes ago?
It's 50% of your total capacity, which is 500. And to be truthful, 500, we've never even come close to 200 on our busiest days.
On the actual beach.
To take that farther, the Department of Health, my guidelines that my lifeguards go by, they count people in the water. There's times they have to staff more, and if they can't staff more, they tell people to get out of the water already. they're already limiting how many people are in the water, more so than what new guidance came from the governor. And I would say the reason why is the governor is these long beaches in Long Island, you know, that they're long and there's multiple, that kind of connects. So I would say they were geared toward that. I don't see a problem with us operating under what he's gave us because we've already probably done that or more.
Okay, and how would you regulate the wearing of masks by employees and by visitors, and who would be enforcing that?
The lifeguards would be, and the park manager would be in charge of enforcing that. And if they had a problem, at that point, I would ask them, they'd have a procedure. Okay, you ask them once, and if they don't do it, you ask them again, you tell them, and then we have a sheriff's department. I mean, it's going to be no different than a local business. At some point, if they can't get somebody to comply, they have to make a call. I don't expect them to be, they're the regulator, not necessarily the enforcer. The sheriff would have to be the enforcer. They deal with this on a normal basis. People do not like to swim within ropes. They don't like to stay on the park's property. They like to go off it. People in nature push the limits to try to get somebody to react. So my lifeguards are already trained, and they're already trained in, incident type stuff like that. So I don't really see much of a problem.
Okay, James Griffith, you're next.
I just had a comment in regards to reduction in occupants. One thing that I know is being looked at across many regions, and especially in the retail section, is reduction in traffic. So if you have a traffic count, Matt, I don't know if you guys keep track of cars and how many cars come in on a daily basis, but that could be another way that you could reduce the occupancy level or set forth a parameter with the state's plan to reduce the occupancy levels.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Who am I missing? Anybody? Matt Hicks?
So I just want to clarify, John Rozell's motion and Paul's second is to close the parks until June 13th with no access. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the way I understand it. Everybody good there? Are we ready to vote? Yeah, let's do a roll call so we know.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Rozell,
Yes.
Mr. Haff,
No.
Mr. Hicks,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes,
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Mr. Losaw.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted 6-1, 6 yes, 1 no.
Okay, so it passed. Matt Hicks.
So what does that mean now? A subcommittee just passed it. The full board hadn't passed it. Where does this go to the next full board meeting? Is that before June 13th or after June 13th?
Yeah, they'll call you that they can come, that you can come in it.
The board, but has Matt been setting the opening date?
Matt, I think that's where we went earlier. Matt usually sets the opening date. We were just solidifying that we were allowing him to move the date. I think that was in our earlier discussion. And that, yeah, it's for clarity. I mean, we're all trying to clarify where we belong, but we were just trying to back Matt up that yes, we'll allow you to move the date because he usually would set those dates anyway.
Okay, so it doesn't need to go any further from here. And the parks will be closed this weekend. I just want to clarify those 2 points, right?
Yes.
Yes, we probably had to ask somebody to make a public statement, today, maybe it'd be Roger again, that our beaches will be closed to the public until the 13th, at which time they'd be open.
We can't see, we can't talk. So we're good.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, beaches and parks, what?
It's one and the same at this point.
The beaches will be closed to the 13th. The gates will be closed to the parks until the 13th, at which time they'll be open.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's not perfect. It's not even as a, resident. I'd like to see the gates open, but as an operator, that's what I gotta suggest. That's what was there.
Okay, is everyone in agreement that this situation is handled now and we're moving on to the next thing on the agenda, or is there more comments we want? Sue Clary.
On that New York State guidelines, it said that the public had to be notified by May 20th, which I believe is today. Yet we haven't taken it to the Board of Supervisors at this point. So how do we handle this when people ask us?
So that's what we were just discussing. So usually Matt would set the dates on when we open anyway. It
Okay.
doesn't come from the Board of Supervisors. We were just solidifying. We're trying to shore up that we're behind Matt's decision. That's why it's going the way it is. So that'll be out there today as soon as our spokesman, Mr. Wicks, is able to get that out there.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else? Dana F.
Point of clarity, then the resolution, the motion should say to support Mr. Jones, not to open the park on the 13th. You know, there's a little bit of a disconnect as to what the resolution actually says and what you're doing.
That's a valid point. I don't know how we want to word that, but Mr. Esquire, do you want to write that?
Well, right now you have, the latest action has been by a committee, okay? And committees instruct department heads. So the committee's instructed the department head. If the board wanted to overrule a committee, because it's not a case of a committee overruling the board, it's a case of the board, you're not overruling the board didn't fail to act. So the committee is now acted. And traditionally Matt comes in and goes, I'm gonna do this, everybody nods their head and agrees, and he's just informed you. Well, now he's informed you, he's changing his mind. You said that's fine, we're gonna do that. So unless there's a special board meeting to circumvent that, that's the last command Matt has, and that's the command Matt will go forward with.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to Stephanie Lemry with the county clerk. Are you there, Stephanie?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
So, after talking with Supervisor Campbell, I wanted to bring it, just a review of what's going on down in my department. Since the beginning of this COVID-19, the clerk's office, I have been here since day one. I have been processing everything that has been coming through the mail and electronically. Since March 19th, I have processed almost 1,000 documents through my office with the court and with the recordings of documents. As of last week, I did bring an additional person in on Tuesdays for 8 hours to help, because with the courts changing their direction, the workload has shifted a little bit more, and the courts are changing almost on a daily basis now. So I have gotten approval, if approved here, to bring somebody in, an additional person in on Thursdays as well. I spoke to Chris on that. He agreed that that would be acceptable from them upstairs. So that would give us a chance to make sure that we are not extremely backlogged once we open up. And with DMV, that's just a nightmare. The commissioner of DMV, the earliest that they will allow us to do anything with the public is June 8th. I don't see him even approving it at that point. I think he's going to push that out again. There's some concerns about people going to the facilities not in their county if their county is not open. Right now, after talking with the committee, talking with Terry from IT, we are going to appointment only scheduling. I have a meeting with her tomorrow to look at 2 systems that can be used in both the DMV office as well as the county clerk's office for once we open as well. Right now, I have 3 individuals 3 times a week at DMV. We started off with 2 people on April 22nd for 4 hours twice a week. Somebody nicely posted on social media, I love Facebook, that we were processing things. We have been bombarded with mail. They're using it in our drop-off. They're sending it in by the mail. Our dealers are back. They are selling cars with all these specials that they are running. So we definitely have more than enough mail and revenue coming in to back the time frame that I have the staff coming in. I did ask Chris with the tentative June 8th date in that committee to approve me going to a 5-day work week with the DMV and still meet all the requirements of the governor and the commissioner. What I am looking at to do is half staff, which we can still social distance, and alternate the half staff every other day to try to make sure that we are majority of caught up prior to us trying to have the public in. They will all be educated on how the scheduling system will go once we have picked a scheduling system. And that's about where we are in those 2 sections of the county right now.
Okay, Stephanie, can you give us any update on revenue, whether it's anywhere, in the ballpark of where normality or a certain percentage? How do you see that at this point?
The revenue for April, I can tell you with us not being open for those 30 days with DMV, our revenue dropped between $50,000 and $60,000 for that month. Once we are able to get everything processed that we have right now in the office, if you're all familiar with our plastic bins, the color-coded bins that we have, just to kind of give you an idea what we have for processing right now. We have 3 of those that are chucked full that we still need to process. We are editing our dealers, so they are starting to put them in. Our dealers are a huge part of our revenue, so we're trying to process that now. With what I am anticipating with the mail and being able to expand our time frame, we should be getting in the next 30 days, we should be hopefully back on track and make up a chunk of that 60,000 or 50 to 60,000 that we've lost already. Luckily, we didn't lose a whole lot of it to the state and other counties. Our dealers kind of held on to them to kind of see what we were doing. So I'm very thankful to our dealers. Our residents have been great. Our little pink envelopes have been coming in and, they call. We explain to them that the governor has extended the time frame, so they're still coming in, so we're not losing that chunk. I have not, and Al may be able to chime in on this. If they do it online, usually on I believe it's a monthly basis, Al will get a check on what our portion from the online is. I have not gotten record that we have met our quota yet, or our threshold, which is almost $500,000 that has been done online. So that is encouraging. That people are starting to realize if it's not here with what's going on, we need the revenue, they are sending it in. There is a couple different avenues that we may look at, once we can start having the public in to keep that coming in the way it is, but I'm trying to get a basis right now to get us caught up.
Excellent. Do we have any questions from the board for Stephanie on any of the measures they're taking or doing or want to proceed with? Is there any questions at all, or are we good? Dana?
Stephanie, you said the revenue for April is down 50, 60,000, but when you process the bins, will you go by the postmark on these bins if they're just, or the date on the documents? So April will be refreshed with the revenue once that is processed. Is that correct?
No, the revenue will show in the actual month that it's processed. Because of the way the governor has addressed things, the only thing that we can backdate, and which is for insurance purposes, is the plate returns.
Okay, but you should, all right, so you'll get credit for what came in during April in a different month. So there's really no way you can gauge what comes in for the month of April. We'll just average that out over the 3 months it takes you to process or whatever it works.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Was that it? Okay, thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate that. Is there any other business that we want to bring to government ops? Chris?
Okay, I have one here. Bear with me. I struggle with technology. Okay. This issue came up previously. I believe it was actually in the Public Safety Committee. So I'm getting a lot of inquiries from department heads, and the issue at hand is anniversary dates. So a number of employees have anniversary dates that will occur during the emergency closure or in some proximity there too. And a lot of employees, like the incident management team or, public health, obviously, or DSS, the crew that's been in here, have been unable to use their accrued benefit time. So what you see on the screen before you is a proposed countywide policy. I don't think it would go in the handbook since it is specific to this event, that it aims to address this issue. And for those who don't have access to their screen, I'll summarize it. And it says, employees whose anniversary date occurred during the emergency closure of county operations due to the COVID-19 pandemic shall have any unused balance of vacation and or personal time carried forward past their anniversary date, and such time shall expire at the employee's next occurring anniversary date. So basically, if your anniversary date happened today, whatever your balance of vacation or personal time would automatically be carried forward and would expire next May 20th. Now, for a number of us, our anniversary date may fall outside of the emergency closure, but due to the long hours worked, we were unable to use our time. So the next paragraph says, or actually a very long sentence, says, employees whose anniversary date occurs after the cessation of the emergency closure of county operations, but whose ability to utilize their accrued vacation and or personal time was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on county operations, shall have such unused balance carried forward past their anniversary date, and such time shall expire at the employee's next occurring anniversary date. So it's the same solution. It just spells out that it also applies to individuals who their anniversary date may fall just outside the emergency closure, but they were unable to use their time. And this would solve the issue that's being brought to me by department heads. So with that, I would open it up to the committee for questions, comments, and concerns.
Okay. Dana?
Are you kidding me? Really, people have been home, paid, and now we're going to give them the vacation pay or the vacation time and pay that they were not able to take a vacation while they were home on vacation being paid? This is incredible. I'm a 3 thumbs down if I had another hand. Incredible.
I can't see the screen. I think you got to take the thing off, just in case there's other people who have questions, that's all. Okay, any other comments from the board? Matt Hicks?
So the problem is we've got 4 tiers of emergency closure employees. Those that were home not working getting paid, those were home working getting paid, those were in-house working getting paid, and those in-house working getting paid time and a half. So if you've got people that are in different categories, how can you tell somebody that was demanded to come in and work and probably work overtime that they can't take their vacation because it was during the closure and you can't bump it out, but they were required to come in and work in the public health department or whatever reason? It doesn't apply to just one person. It applies to, I think, there's over 100 people involved in this already. And it's going to be very difficult to break it out into 4 different tiers. You've sort of got to make a blanket statement one way or the other. And actually, I wouldn't mind if Melissa weighed in on this a little bit, if you want to unmute her.
You there, Melissa?
Yes, I'm here.
There she is. Go ahead.
Well, Supervisor Hicks, kind of hit it right on the nose. There's many employees that during this closure have been working from home. They've been told that they need to be available to any work that is given to them during the closure. Then, of course, you do have employees that aren't working at all. I don't know how many of those there actually are. And then you've got those that are reporting to work. So I just don't know a clean way to do it unless you treat everybody the same. We did tell people when the county closed that basically you're at our beck and call. So when you are told to come back to work, you need to come back to work. As of, I believe last week I looked, we had over 135 employees that will be affected as far as anniversaries going by from mid-March until June 1st. There were about 135 or so employees that had the anniversary dates during this time period that will be affected by this.
Okay. I think the other issue is there was no way you could take a vacation anyway. There was no place you could go. You're supposed to be home. So I think there's a myriad of conditions here and different rules and regulations than anybody ever expected to be under. And I think with all the things coming forward that are going to be on our plate, this is one we can get off our plate before it ever gets started. And there may be some of those we want to do just so we can concentrate on the things that are really high priority, because some are going to raise to that level very quickly and there will be all at once. So I guess that's where I'm at here. Mr. Half.
I would be agreeable to those that were really impacted, not a blanket. If those people could be parsed out, the ones that, we all hear about a staycation. Not everyone goes away on vacation, but those that were told, that they had to be available just in case they could not go on a vacation, I could agree to those, but not a blanket statement or even a statement that would liberally include all those that, you have to be here just in case, even though we said it won't happen until May 15th or whatever. I'm not in favor of treating everyone the same in this regard.
Okay. So do we have a motion on that to move it?
I make a motion that we parse out those that were really impacted, not everybody else.
I don't see any seconds on that, Dana. Is there any motion?
There's not even a motion. There's not even a motion to do it blanket wide, is there?
I'll make that motion.
No, that's what I'm just asking again. Matt's going to make a motion on the blanket. Is there a second on the blanket?
Is that Dan's second?
Was that the second there, Mr. Hardy? Oh, Mr. Shaw, okay. I'll second that for discussion because I think we may want to look at this. I don't know. That doesn't mean there's anybody that's in support. I can't tell. Any more discussion? Mr. Losaw?
Yeah, I'd like to have the department heads have a say in whether vacation can be granted, depending if their work is available or if it'll put a hindrance on that department. They should be included, which they probably normally are anyway. But
they always are, yes.
Not.
Vacation is awarded.
And so to Roger's point, vacation is always approved at the department head's discretion. And that was part of the rationale behind my suggestion that the time be carried over until the following anniversary date. My concern being that when we do resume operations, there is going to be a massive amount of work that needs to be done. And if we truncated the time period to use any such carried forward vacation time, I think we would run into staffing problems. So the idea was to spread it out over the following year to try to minimize the operational impact.
Good, thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay. Mr. Ferguson?
Yeah, I was thinking, I know people take their vacations. I don't know what the number is for people to have in the last 2 months during the COVID-19, how much time they had left to roll over. But I also think it's none of our business what people do with their vacations, whether they take a stay vacation or they go away on vacation. They weren't able to do those. They weren't able to do those things. So I don't see how we have anything to say what they do with their vacations.
Okay.
That's it.
Sue Clary? You have to unmute, Sue.
Yeah, on the motion, it should be unused, I think, rather than used. Clerical. I think, Chris, in the second paragraph.
Oh,
Is that right?
The second paragraph reads, ellipses, personal time was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on county operations shall have such unused balance carried forward past their anniversary date.
Is there one that says, it doesn't say unused, it says used? I'm not sure which paragraph.
The first, yes, that has been corrected. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
wow. Sharp eyes there.
Yeah,
good job.
Very sharp.
She's sitting in her seat.
Yes, I am sitting in your seat, Mrs. Becker. You're channeling my screen.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Mr. Adams opposed. The motion's carried. Okay, is there anything else that you guys want to bring up? Any clarifications before we leave? I'm going to go back to Chris right now.
So just a bit of a general discussion with the board. What we've done is Tim has created a survey for the department heads. I think I'm going to set up a virtual department head meeting tomorrow to explain the survey, get some feedback from them. One question I have for the board that staff certainly cannot answer, but I think we need your guidance as we move forward toward reopening. Again, reading tea leaves, the best we know at the moment is that we can kind of start to reopen county government 2 weeks from today. So one question we have is, I know some counties every county I'm aware of is going to have a universal mask policy for the public. So ask members of the public to wear masks when they come in. What the counties are somewhat divided on is whether they are going to try and take temperatures and symptom screen members of the public as they come into the building. Now, our current goal is to utilize by appointment only to the greatest extent practicable. So that will hopefully limit the amount of public in the building to some extent. But I think we need guidance from the board on whether, as part of our reopening plan, you would like a provision where we take the temperature and ask symptom questions of the public, or whether that's not something the board wants us to do. That will help inform in how we open up.
Dana F.
I think there's so many asymptomatic people that to take people's temperature, you're just wasting your time and you're not going to solve anything. If people don't feel well, stay home. But there's a lot of people that feel well, do not have a temperature, and they're asymptomatic, and they're going to come into the building. They're going to pass with flying colors the thermometer check, and you have accomplished nothing because they can still, spread the disease. I think it's just an exercise in futility.
Anyone else?
I'd agree with Dana.
Yeah, that's a good question, Roger.
The recommendation for public health, given everything, I haven't spoken to her immediately, but the last recommendation was that it was CDC guidelines to screen temperatures. So that was the recommendation for public health.
It's a recommendation, not a mandate, correct?
Correct, and I think that from what I've heard from other counties, there was concerns about efficacy and also, whether it's too intrusive or not. And so the guidelines from the federal and I believe the state government is that temperatures of the visiting public be taken. But I think I felt it was important to get the input of the board on this, of whether you were comfortable with that or not.
Well, besides unreasonable search and seizure, searching your temperature, I just think it's completely ineffective. I think you don't want to do things that are not effective.
Matt Hicks.
How many access points are we talking about, Chris? And so how many stationary people taking temperatures 8 hours a day are we talking about? A and B only?
Well, sorry, those in the main complex, A and B. C would be up to courts, I believe. I haven't gone far down this road because I didn't know what the will of the board was going to be, but my initial conception was that courts would be in charge of C. We would have A and B. There may still be, the LEC is the sheriff's purview. We'll provide him with the equipment to do it if he needs to, if he wants to. Given the population in there, that may be a very good idea. And then we will have a station out at Annex 1. I don't know about Annex 2 because I don't know what the operational stance of WIC is going to be moving forward. That's somewhat complicated.
What about the other school?
Potentially, I believe we have enough units ordered that we could do. We'll have one for employees if we're going, and we could utilize that for the public as well.
So what's the limit? If it's 99.5 or above or 100.5 or above, then they would not be allowed access into the building?
So there's a CDC cutoff for it. Off the top of my head, I think it's 100.5. And yes, that becomes the tricky point is what do you do if somebody is over that threshold, right? The guidance and the suggestion is that you don't admit them to the building. I think that's problematic for us in certain instances where I don't know that we necessarily have the ability to turn somebody away from a service. I'm not sure. That's a question for Roger and people smarter than I. But I believe the CDC guidelines is 100.5.
So if somebody is coughing and sneezing, can you ask them not to come in? Because if that's the case, with things that are blooming right now, unless I OD on Claritin, I'll never be in the building again.
Yeah, I mean, a similar issue emerges with masks in that, it's our intention, currently we have enough supply to make this happen, that at each of our main public entrances, we're not going to put masks out because I think they'll walk away, but we will have staff who can issue a mask to somebody, because I would hate to have somebody come down from Dresden or Putnam, get to the front door and realize they left their mask on the kitchen counter and not be able to come in. The harder question is when somebody is coughing and sneezing and they say it's allergies and they don't want to put on a mask, how do we handle that? And I don't have an answer to that question. I'm asking for feedback and input from the board because I don't know how we're supposed to handle these things.
You're putting on a mask or you're not coming in. I mean, I think that because you have no reason to know why or how somebody's coughing and sneezing. I think you're just wearing a mask or you're not coming in.
That would certainly be my preference.
I think that's the bottom line on that. My question is, if we're going school, do we test everyone that works there for BoS? Or do we just do our wing?
Are they out or in the process of out?
They're in the process of out. But I mean, if you start up and they're all coming in the building, how do you do that? Or do they use their back entrance? They use their part. Stay out of our court? That's right.
It's very separate to begin with, and I think it's largely going to be a moot point that they're on their way out.
Okay.
Who's doing the temperature taking? Is it we have to hire additional staff for that?
Tim Hardy said he's going to run from door to door.
So, Mr. Hicks, that is a logistical question that is as of yet unanswered. It may require additional staff for the reallocation of existing staff. That's why I wanted to have this discussion today, so that if the will of the board was that we try to implement this, then we need to work through all the logistics of how to do it. If it's a non-starter and the board feels that it's not appropriate to do, then we don't have to go down that road.
And if I'm doing it, I'm wearing a gown and I'm wearing a face shield and I'm wearing a mask and goggles and everything else. Because I'm sitting there all day long taking people's temperatures. That's quite an exposure.
So the advantage we have is that we were successful. I believe, I'm looking at Mr. Hardy, the units have shipped. We were successful in buying some new technology that allows us to take the person's temperature extremely accurately remotely from a laptop. So you're going to be more than 6 feet from everybody, and it will be very effective, very accurate, and you won't have to get close to anybody. So, you know, I think we were trying to get the technology to be able to do this, because we're going to have to do it with employees, and we have that same, you know, proximity issue with employees. And the solution that we use for employees could work for the public as well. There's no touching of anything. We don't have to sanitize the unit in between individuals. So luckily, I think we have a solution that is very low risk with regard to that.
Have you've actually used that to see the accuracy? I mean,
no, we don't have them yet. They're shipped from California.
No, I didn't know if you had actually tried them.
No. We have the handheld infrared thermometers that finally, the second batch made it through customs. We've deployed those to the departments that are back up and running, and those are mildly accurate. So we're hoping, you know, everything we've seen on these newer units is that they're extremely accurate, and that's, we hope it.
Mr. Hicks is right. At the health centers and stuff, wherever they let people in, they're goggled, they're masked, they're totally covered, and it's not distance, they're spot on, they're right in your face with the thermometer. So I mean, yeah, if we're gonna do that, you're probably gonna want everybody protected, because that person's at risk because they handled everybody. So, but if we can do it from a more distancing approach, I guess that would change what our policy might be on how we handle that. Any more questions on that? Do you want a motion to clarify exactly what we want?
No, I don't think I need exactly. I think I just need direction. Or are we trying to come up with a solution to do symptom and temperature checks of the public, or is that something the board does not want us to pursue?
Then we'll just move on to something else.
Yeah, we got enough fish to fry. I'm not asking. I'm just saying.
Down.
Okay, Dana says no, but we're hearing that Patty's saying yes to do it. I guess that's where I'm concerned a little bit. Patty's saying yes, CDC's saying yes. I'm kind of with Dana that I don't think that if they're asymptomatic, I don't know what we do anyway, but if the CDC and Patty are saying we have to do it, we kind of have to do it. I'm going to go with caution here. How does the board feel? Do we have a motion to go forward and do what Patty suggests, or do we want to tell Patty to put that on her screen? Dave O'Brien.
So considering the liability if people get in and we have things happen, I would make a motion that we go forward with Patty's and CDC's recommendations.
Okay, is there a second on that?
Yes, I'll second that.
Second. Somebody else, who they have? Mr. Ferguson, okay. Is there any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Carried. Okay, next.
I believe that was all I had.
You said you had more fish to fry. What are we doing here?
I got lots to do.
So is that everything? Any more clarity on any of the discussions we've had so far? Who are we pointing to here? Mr. Nolet?
Just a procedural question, please. The motion the committee made and adopted for the vacation time, does that still have to go to the full board, or is this committee able to bind the board on that motion?
Should go to finance.
Yeah.
Depends on where you want it to go.
I'm sure it can go to either. It can go to finance or full board. Either way, it's got to get to the full board at some point. So we can do it directly. It's whatever you guys wish.
Well, that was my question. Does there have to be a full board resolution now, which will happen probably after we reopen, just so that I know what to tell employees and when.
Isn't it like an ad hoc policy amendment?
But it overrides the handbook as it's been adopted, Matt, so it should probably go before the full board. 'Cause it's
That's
an
what-
Maybe with a
override.
sunset clause?
Yes. The sunset is the next anniversary date.
I would think it'd go right from here to the full board. There's no monetary impact per se.
Right.
Right, that was my
There
question.
is, but it's indirect.
Right, that was the genesis of my question was where, does it still have to go to the full board? That was my question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else anybody has until the next time, which could be who knows when? Mr. Hess?
I think I broke a record today. I think I voted no on every single thing.
Oh, come on, you've been good at that before. You didn't let us down anyway.
I think
You were
my
three
first,
thumbs down.
my first board meeting, I think I voted no on everything, and then this one.
You've come full circle, Dana.
You did a 3 thumbs down today too, Dana.
Without taking your shoes off. Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate it. And we're now